Welcome and welcome back to Triple S Breakdowns. Today we're breaking down Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Let's begin. Point number 1. Did anyone else's mind go to the British ghost hunting show Most Haunted presented by Yvette Fielding when they saw the very green tinted night vision used here that Most Haunted used to use way back in the show's early days before they switched to black and white night vision? Just me? Okay. Point number 2, I like how they handled not having to bring back the piece of shit that is Jeffrey Jones for this movie, but could still include his character of Charles. Because, yeah, while they could have gone with the simple option that Charles did just up and leave his wife, his daughter and his home, I don't think that would have fit his character. But then of course, in a franchise all about ghosts and the afterlife, if they had Charles die, they would either have had to recast him or never follow up on seeing him in the afterlife and explain why we don't see him, or still include him in the movie in some other fashion without recasting him. So Charles getting his head bitten off by a shark, then having him voiced by someone who sounds like Jeffrey Jones was, I think, a clever way to pull off that last option. And sure, in the grand scheme of this movie, the characters of Delia and Charles aren't all that important and could have either just been cut entirely or we only ever saw Delia but never Charles. I think including both of them was the right way to go, even if it does add to the bloat of the movie. But in regards to the bloat, that's something I'm going to talk about in detail later on in the video. Point number 3, it's the penguin. Quick, Batman, get him. Point number 4, I like how Astrid breaks the naming convention of the women in this family. You got Delia, Lydia, and now Astrid. It's like if in House of the Dragon, Lena and Daemon had a daughter they called Baela, and then Baela had a daughter and ended up calling her Madison. It's fitting Astrid has such a different name from her mother and grandmother because it helps to show just how different she feels from them. Also, as a Doctor Who fan, it makes me think of Kylie Minogue's character in the 2007 Christmas special Voyage of the Damned, and how everyone thought she must be in some way connected to the TARDIS since Astrid is an anagram of TARDIS. But anyway, that's got nothing to do with this movie, so moving on. Point number 5, yep, just let him hold his head lower than where it would be sat on his neck. Just completely validate the reason you have people photographed next to a height chart. It's as if this precinct isn't an actual precinct run by actual cops or something. Point number 6, so you know how I mentioned how bloated this movie is earlier? Well, let's get into that. In this movie, you have 3 main plot lines: Lydia's, Astrid's, and Beetlejuice's. But then the bloat comes in with the minor plot lines: Delia's, Charles's, Wolf Jackson's, and Dolores's. As I've said though, including Delia and Charles in this movie was the right decision in my opinion. Leaving them out would have been a crime. In regards to Wolf Jackson and Dolores though, from how I see it, the only reason they were included was just so we could have more scenes of Beetlejuice before his big entrance into the world of the living when Lydia summons him asking for his help. But you could cut Dolores out of the movie completely and nothing would really change. Beetlejuice could have still used his old reason of wanting to marry a living woman from the first movie, that if he did he could stay in the mortal world, without having to add on to that reason by saying he wanted to stay in the mortal world to get away from his soul-sucking wife. Take out Dolores and then you could also completely get rid of the Wolf Jackson character. Or if you still wanted to include him, rework it so he's keeping a close eye on Beetlejuice due to his bioexorcism business, trying to find a way to bring it down. And before anyone says, not having Wolf Jackson or Dolores would mean we get less Beetlejuice. Is that what you want? Less Beetlejuice in a movie named after him twice? Let me remind you that in the first movie, Beetlejuice only had 17 minutes of screen time. And that's not to say we couldn't still keep a few of the more Beetlejuice heavy scenes in the second movie. Beetlejuice talking to Wolf Jackson at the precinct could instead be about Beetlejuice's bioexorcism business, and Beetlejuice could still tell all of his employees about his first marriage and how his wife murdered him, but then change the story so that he didn't chop her up with an axe before he died, but instead possessed her next victim to then take her out and get his revenge, giving him the idea to get into the bioexorcism business so he could help out other ghosts suffering from similar situations or wanting revenge against still living people. So yes, summed up short, the interconnected plot lines of Lydia, Astrid, Beetlejuice, Delia and Charles, good. Throwing in Wolf Jackson and Dolores just to give us more Beetlejuice early, bad. Point number 7, Beetlejuice breaks the fourth wall now? Beetlejuice breaks the fourth wall now. Point number 8, love that they included the song Deo again for this movie, but I was a little disappointed we only got to hear the song Jump in the Line Shake Sonora in the trailers. I kept hoping for it to play at some point, maybe at the end again like with the first movie, but alas my hoping was in vain. Point number 9, I think Lydia throwing in here that her and Richard's relationship had ended long before Richard actually died was a preemptive attempt to explain why their reunion later on in the movie isn't some massive thing between them, and so it wouldn't take away from the more important reunion between Richard and Astrid. Point number 10, alright, everyone, look me in the eye and tell me seeing Astrid and Jeremy didn't make you think of Wednesday Addams and Tyler Galpin. I mean, besides the obvious fact that Jenna Ortega plays both Astrid and Wednesday, just look at Arthur Conti and Hunter Doohan. They could be related. Plus, then you have the whole the guy seems nice at first and wants to be more than just friends but ends up being revealed to be not so great a guy thing that happens in both Wednesday and this movie. And it just makes me think Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, who both created Wednesday and wrote the story for this movie, just turned to each other and said, yeah, let's just do that again to Jenna Ortega's character. Which would actually be really funny since, according to this Forbes article, Alfred Gough said, to be honest, we didn't write Astrid with her Jenna Ortega in mind, only because one of the things that we talked to Tim Burton about was that we didn't want her to feel like Wednesday, nor we didn't want her to feel like young Lydia from the first movie. I mean,
mission accomplished, good work.
That they made her not feel like a young Lydia, but when it comes to making her not feel like Wednesday, in regards to their respective romantic interests and what happens between them,
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Point number 11. So in the first movie, we find out people usually can't see ghosts because
live people ignore the strange and unusual.
But Lydia can see ghosts because
I myself am strange and unusual.
So why is it, after having never been able to see ghosts all her life, Ashley can suddenly see Jeremy and his mum and dad? Is it just because she smashed her head into the tree? Because that'd be kinda lame. Point number 12. Looking at these newspaper articles, a few stood out to me, like Rafe taunted by TV crew has got to be related to the footage we saw Lydia play on her show. And also we've seen the woman mentioned in the article, Crazy Cat Lady discovers that humans don't get 9 lives, Stannis' Beetlejuice in the waiting room. Point number 13. Love this callback. Point number 14. Does anyone else feel like this shot is at a place like, why is he just out of nowhere drooling slime? Just me? Okay. Point number 15. I guess in the 23 years since Jeremy murdered his parents, they all made up, considering they never tried to warn Astrid about their son. Point number 16. So this is just the most bullshit scene in the entire movie. Seeing poor, sweet, innocent Bob get his soul sucked out like that almost made me walk out of the cinema. But I'm glad I didn't, or I would have missed the in-loving memory of Bob message during the credits, which brought a tear to my eye. I'll miss you, Bob, you beautiful bastard. Point number 17. With this movie being PG-13 and PG-13 movies only being allowed to use the word fuck once, this was undoubtedly the best moment to use it. Point number 18. So apparently this dog we see when Beetlejuice is singing about the loves of his life is actually Tim Burton's dog. Though I'm willing to bet a bunch of people probably first thought of the dog on the bridge that led to the Maitland's deaths in the first movie, even though the two dogs look nothing alike. Because, I mean, why wouldn't Beetlejuice love the dog that set everything in motion for him and Lydia to eventually cross paths, you know? Point number 19. Beetlejuice freezing Wolf Jackson and the Ghoul Squad really makes me wonder just how powerful is Beetlejuice? Is it because he's been dead for 600 years that he's able to do the things he does to people who haven't been ghosts for as long? Because if he could freeze all these guys, why couldn't he just also freeze Dolores? Unless she's at the same ghostly power level as him, you know? Point number 20. At first it seemed to me like Astrid, and by extension the writers, just kind of pulled this whole violating code 699 invalidates the marriage contract thing out of their asses. But we have seen twice Astrid open to the exact page she needed to find out about what the punishments of violating code 699 would be.
How convenient.
Sure, yeah, they're blink and you miss it moments, but it still explains how she knows and how it wasn't just a random thing thrown in as a sort of deus ex machina to get Lydia out of having to marry Beetlejuice in the end. I am surprised though Beetlejuice didn't know bringing Lydia into the afterlife would make any marriages he's entered into null and void, or maybe he did but just thought he could get away with it. I mean, the contract didn't burn up until someone pointed it out after all. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the movie goes to the bloat that including the characters of Wolf Jackson and Dolores added to the movie. They really could just be cut from the movie entirely and nothing would really be lost story-wise. And my most liked part of the movie goes to Bob, the MVP, the GOAT. Okay, seriously though, my most liked part of the movie actually goes to how the movie itself builds on and complements the first movie. It's not better than the first movie, I'm not saying that, but it is just as good and is a solid sequel that honours the original. Thank you all for watching Triple S Breakdowns. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, don't forget to sub, and why not leave a comment below with your feedback and anything that I missed but you noticed. I'd love to hear from you all. I've been Triple S, you've all been amazing, and I shall see you all in the next video.